Welcome to the StockMentor.com studios here in the Black Hills of South Dakota. I'm your stock mentor, Brian Johnson. I'm making professional trading simple. Welcome to the Sunday afternoon video. New plays, new things to watch as we come into this Thanksgiving week. I have to remind you that Thanksgiving week usually means lighter volume. Lighter volume has seemed to favor the bulls. So you must be aware of that if you are holding short positions coming into this time. We will wait and see what early in the week brings. There might still be some real trading with some good volume early in the week, and then that might die out as Tuesday, Wednesday come into play. Thursday, the markets are not open. Friday, I believe they close early. I do believe they close at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So keep that in mind as you trade this week. Once again, as options expiration week, I usually suggest, or I usually drop my share size back a little bit and just play it from day to day. You might be able to hold overnight. It's a little bit easier during this week, I think, than it is options expiration week. So keep that in mind going forward. As we look at the markets, you can see here, cleaned up a lot of my charts this weekend. Just took down some old trend lines that I don't think are all that pertinent anymore. Left the ones up that I think still could come into play this week, and this is ultimately what we're watching on the Dow 60 minute. You can see this has started a trend line on its way back up again here. I think if I went ahead and copied and pasted that up here, I can probably get this look, and you'll see I've done that with a few of the other charts to show you what the new channel is that we are following. Looking for the Dow, which has been by far the strongest of the NASDAQ and the SPX. It just is, the big behemoth refuses to go down. So we are waiting for it to finally start breaking some of these bigger support levels. And I think then that might be the mark of a bigger pullback in the markets. It's obviously due for something to that effect. Whether it's a huge drop to new depths or just a pullback is yet to be seen. But pullback is certainly coming. You can see it in the markets as things start to slow down and momentum starts to roll out. So we're looking for a break below this trend line here, ultimately below the 10-200 is really where I'd like to get. Below this area here could spell a little bit more problem for the bulls if it can break and get below this line here on the Dow. Once again, the Dow has been very strong lately, so if it's going to lead us, if we are going to move up these next few days, I would expect this to obviously do that in advance of all the other indices. So watch for it to break this 10,350 area. That could take us back up towards the underside of this trend line or back up towards the 10,450 area. On the daily, as the Dow, you can see we have hit this upper resistance line and this further resistance line. It's holding nicely for the time being, but we've had two down. You can see the two red candles that we have here, both of them with little tails on the bottom. There is still buying interest in this market right here. It has been buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip. That's all everyone's been doing. So why stop here? Especially coming into a week such as Thanksgiving, where the volume might be a little bit lighter. You can see on a daily more clearly why I'd like to, from a bear standpoint, break the 10-200. If it cannot, if this holds, look for more bullish action. Maybe we see a pullback right to, maybe a dip below, and then a pull, and then a close above the 10-200 early in the week, followed by some move upwards after that. But the 10-200, look for, we want if you're bearish, you want to close below this area. That would be a very good sign for you if you can get that close. Otherwise, as a bull, you're waiting for this area up here. Wait for a break one way or the other. We are in limbo. Once again, you can see us in between these two trading ranges. Just be very careful in here as the week begins. NDX on a 60-minute, this overhead line is what we're looking to get back to and eventually get over if you're bullish on the markets. Otherwise, this is really, really heavy support now coming back into this area, the 1740 area, especially with the 200 and this previous support area back here. Very strong support down in this area. Watch those levels going into next week. The close came now below this rising wedge pattern again. We've seen it down here. That was made for a little bit bit bigger pullback. Now we're seeing it again. We still have, like I said, back down here, tons of support below this market. So caution must be used, like I said, coming into a low volume week. Watch this very closely. Let's see, wrong direction. Let's go this way. NDX on a weekly, holding very nicely at this overhead resistance, the line that we drew in. 1773 being the 61.8% retrace line of the entire bear market for the NASDAQ. So the NASDAQ coming back with a vengeance from this huge bounce in March. Now holding very nicely at this resistance level. Volume is okay for the time being, but looking for a pullback maybe into the 1700 area, which would coincide with the 200. If it does get down into that area, I would certainly tell you to keep that line on your chart and watch for a bounce or a pause there. SPX on a 60-minute. This also has a line that it has been following to the downside. Lots of overhead resistance above it, but not too difficult to get through as we've seen in the past for the bulls. It's once again by the dip type of a motion. So watching the S&P here to the upside, sitting here on this old support line very nicely. Has a lot of this 1100 is still giving it fits, and any push of course over 1113 is just very bullish for this market. You'll see these darker blue lines that I now have in here. That is our new channel that we need to be watching. This has started to kind of flatten out as we roll over here a little bit. So how long this can go? This can go for weeks, another couple weeks really, to get this whole effect to come about. But we're watching this very closely as we see these two darker blue lines are now acting as our new channel going forward. From a weekly standpoint, I really like this lower trend line. I love that it held here. This candle here does look like a topping candle, but I need a confirmation candle on this one because it really, at this point in the progression, doesn't mean that much to me right now. So watch us start over a block and maybe move back up into this area here as I had talked about over the last week or two. VIX on a daily, just messy. Chopping sideways, ever growing larger and larger. This is that big megaphone look that you tend to get to some things. If that's the case, this probably puts it right down at the lower trend line, somewhere in the 20 area, which coincides, or the 18 area, which coincides with this big green line down here on the weekly. Break below this dotted would certainly bring us back to that line, I would think, eventually. A little break right down to here on the VIX, which makes your puts and calls a lot cheaper, but that means more of a rise for the bulls in the markets. Apple on a 60-minute, gonna hold on to this one. I like watching this one because we're not that far from good trades one way or the other. We get up and above the 200